Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're enjoying your day even better than we are, because after many restless days and tireless nights, with Great Lakes Circle Systems is happy to deliver the 143rd Street extension. Enjoy.
So before we get too into it, first we're going to go through this overview. First we have the executive summary and corporate qualifications, project management and coordination. Then following we'll have the technical approach, project schedule, and ending with the cost estimate.
So here's our mission and vision from our amazing and brilliant founder, Emerson Taylor, and there's the key personnel that will be working on this project.
So this is the executive summary that we submitted as a part of our proposal, kind of just going over who we are and explaining our bid for this project, kind of just an overview that we're going to now go into an explanation, and we thank you for your consideration.
So I'm Bryce Howard. I am the project engineer for this extension.
Hi, I'm Lily. I'm the safety officer.
My name's Evan. I'm the project manager.
I'm Adita. I'm the community relations officer.
I'm Greg Gerardo. I'm the lead scheduler.
And I'm Amelia. I'm the lead cost estimator.
So here's some of our previous work. We have done the Green Link 41 project out in Kenosha, Wisconsin, the Groves River out in Minneapolis, Minnesota, a roundabout out in Newark, Ohio, and finally, one of our favorite projects, the Wildlife Crossing out in South Haven, Michigan. Michigan is home to about 2 million deer populations and frequently experiences crashes involving wildlife. So to say that we're the first company to build a wildlife corridor in that state is something that we're all very proud to announce.
Stakeholder coordination is very important for project management, and for this project, we have chosen 4 groups of stakeholders. They are law enforcement, ComEd for utilities, the fire department, and private property owners. We're not just trying to make sure that boxes are checked, we're also trying to make sure that all parties can work together and their work can align properly. We will have bi-weekly meetings with the fire department and law enforcement to ensure safety routes in case of emergencies. We'll also coordinate with the utilities we'll also coordinate with the utilities. Thank you.
Our QA/QC plan is here to ensure that all work complies with the project specifications and industry regulations and requirements, as well as delivering a really high-quality final product. The quality assurance components consist of pre-construction planning, document control, and internal audits. The second component, the quality control, includes material and work inspections, as well as testing of the strength of concrete, the compaction and stability of soils, proper welding, etc. This is all followed by documentation and reporting, as well as non-conformance and corrective action, which includes subsequent reviews, inspections, and reporting.
So, as was mentioned earlier, a managed plan is very important in a construction project. Our focus for this project is just open communication. So, as mentioned, we will have stakeholder meetings, but the primary is going to be a weekly meeting where we pretty much invite everyone involved. This will be primarily for communication between you, the owner, and us as the contractor. We'll go over progress schedules, cost forecasting, and essentially just make sure that everything we're doing matches what you want. This is also an opportunity to work with the subcontractors, the stakeholders, and make sure that all their information is shown for everyone, so there's no one kind of left behind. We also are going to use this to work on a relation with you. We're going to go over any potential submittals we have, any potential transmittals you're sending down to us, any RFIs we may have, just to make sure anything that we might need expedited or you might need expedited is addressed. Also, part of this is just looking to make us a more innovative site. So per the local company that's going to be helping us be more innovative, we have drones that we might use. Then at these meetings, we'll discuss the best way to work on this, whether it be aerial views for quality assurance inspections, having surveillance for high-risk activities, and just having like that eye in the sky that's very helpful and it allows you to see the whole site, details, something you can't see on the ground.
Now, as he mentioned, we have contractors on site, and those are a key component to our work. We have selected 6 contractors here, and when selecting our contractors, with Great Lakes Circle Systems, we always want to be bettering the community that we're in, and to do that, we've also had a focus on involving minority, veteran, and disability-owned businesses, and the contract requires a 20% DBE. We have exceeded that with approximately 23% DBE. DBE contractors are Deep Flow, Erosion Edge, Gauges Gauge Guys, and Bright Span Fence. Our non-DBE, but still extremely valuable to the project, is our Rockport and Prime Terra. We received those quotes over the phone, which is why we do not have their logos. Now, when selecting our quotes, we had an emphasis on the quality work, not necessarily the lowest cost, because it's always better to build it once than build it twice. So, that when selecting these, we were focused on whether they were able to complete the work properly, ensuring that everything was done perfectly. Now, as for coordination, before construction even begins, we will have meetings with both the client, us, and our subcontractors to make sure that the subcontractors understand the sequencing of events and that nobody will be stepping on each other's toes. Going along with that, at our weekly coordination meetings, the subcontractors will be deeply involved to make sure that they are completing the work properly, that they're on schedule. If they are seeing any problems that perhaps the owner or ourselves are not aware of, they're bringing those up so we can address them quickly. Also, we will be receiving a lot of information from the client that we will be having to change things, as every project is. We want to make sure that our communication is clear with our subcontractors. When the client says something, we receive that information and we give that directly to our subcontractors so that the work is always moving forward and it's moving along properly.
And to make sure the work is moving along properly, we of course need to address the safety of all of our workers. That is our top priority. So of course, in any construction project, there's going to be a number of safety hazards. Here we've listed the main hazards pertaining to the 143rd Street work site, as well as their mitigation strategies required by OSHA. For example, for heat stress, to prevent that, we will implement frequent hydration breaks. For spill containment, we have a spill control system to handle the management and containment of spilled liquids, such as during the pouring of concrete. For fall protection, we will use guardrails, railings, and tow boards, such as during the excavation of the roadway. On to you, my colleague Adita.
We're also taking psychological well-being into account. We're going to have daily mental health check-ins as well as monthly toolbox talks to ensure that all crew members are being heard, and there will also be resources posted up in the work zone so crew members know that help is accessible.
We have 2 emergency response facilities identified, the first being the Edward Elmhurst Health Center, which is a 10-minute drive from the work site. For a 24-access hospital, we have a Rush Copley Medical Center, which is a 20-minute drive from the work site.
We have also designated 3 muster points along the work zone. They were chosen because of their accessibility as well as visibility, so crew members are able to evacuate quickly in case of an emergency, and the locations are listed here.
So another important aspect that kind of is also related to safety is just environmentality. We as a company are very committed to making sure all of our work is sustainable because we like living on the planet. So there's 2 main aspects of this we looked into. First is the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, the SWIP. This is just to make sure that runoff doesn't go into the natural environment, which can cause detrimental damage now and in the future to those that live in the area, both wildlife and human life. Other side of that is just working with natural disasters and the climate of the area. It can get very cold with heavy snow accumulation in the winter, and in the spring and the rainy months, we can get torrential downpours that lead to standing water and major flooding. We'll be working to look at potential weather systems and site preparation, whether that be stakeholder relation for snow clearing or putting salt and sand down on the site to make sure everyone's safe. And we also have, as will be discussed later, some scheduling leeway where if we need to stop work to make sure everyone's able to get into work safe, and that's not possible, we have the ability to do that without offsetting the final turnover date.
Now, this is the real meat and potatoes of the thing, and this is obviously my favorite part, the technical approach. Now, firstly, we have our phase construction activities. Those will include our construction phase in terms of our culvert design, our excavation, roadway pavement, all the good stuff. On top of that, we have our centralized staging area. A big shout out to my colleague over there for creating this amazing demonstration of what it's supposed to look like. In terms of that, in terms of trucking routes, trucks will go up to northbound on Illinois Route 129, turn in, thanks to our brilliant traffic control management firm, drop off all their materials in the 20,000 feet stockpiling bed, and continue doing that, making sure that it's efficient and stays on time, because that's something that we pride ourselves on. On top of that, for floodplain erosion control, we wanted to keep this site away from I-59 because it's in the area of the DuPage River, which sees varying water levels in order to minimize erosion and the sort of contamination, because that's the last thing we want to happen at this firm. And on top of that, we also did utility confirmation, having weekly meetings with IDOTs and the local providers to make sure that we stay on top of things and we don't run into any sorts of power lines or gas lines that could halt production for months on end. On top of that, we have our demolition and material use. We pride ourselves on green reuse, so if we do find any materials that our lab can designate as green use and overall helpful for the area, we will do that, but if not, it will be properly disposed at the correct area. On top of that, we have contingency planning, as my colleagues previously pointed out. We will be laying out stuff for on-site teams, any evacuation materials, anything of that sort, in order to keep our workers safe, healthy, and completely efficient. On top of that, procurement, the MSC walls that we previously mentioned are going to take a big chunk of this, and we'll further elaborate that on the schedule section of our presentation. But on top of that, we want to make sure that we stay on top of the procurement so that everything can stay on top and we can get those things fabricated, because again, we pride ourselves on time.
So another aspect that we like to look at that could be detrimental to human life, safety, schedule, and budget is risk. So we as the contractor went through and made a risk register that kind of look forward to some potential risk or incidents that might occur on site and ways we can help mitigate them. We used our past experience as a project team in this area and on similar sites, along with some data sets from NOAA for weather, OSHA for potential safety hazards, to come up with some hazards that we want to prepare for. So some of the ways we did that, we looked at how to avoid it, mitigate, and some we just have to accept. We worked with the stakeholders, so every risk we're looking forward to has an owner, so nothing gets left aside, and also making sure they all know about what might happen, if it may impact them as well, if it's from our site or not. So we have here some that we look on. A lot of it relies on the quality assurance plan and then also the safety plan that we put in place and described earlier.
So moving on to the schedule, we are currently estimating a total project duration of 399 days from notice to proceed to completion. Now, this is 9 days early ahead of substantial completion. This is time that we can begin actually having the owners come on and really verifying that our work is up to what they need and what they want. This also gives us a turnover of 7 days early. This is when the actual vehicles can be moving on this road and it can be fully turned over to the community and begin bettering all of them. We've added a 7-day delay for any inclement weather, including lots of rainfall. This is essential to make sure, because it's Illinois, we will get a lot of rainfall. We will have days off that no work can occur due to this. We have placed this after the excavation activities in our schedule as determined by the RFP. And as advised in the RFP, they have said not to use finish-finish relationships. However, we have determined that this is one of the better relationships to use due to the linear nature of this work. For example, our excavation begins at the east end and follows west. We don't want to wait until the very end of excavation to begin pouring in that rock fill and doing the other work that can begin, because most importantly, we have subcontractors, we have labor, and we have work that needs to get done. We don't want people waiting around. We want work to always be getting done. Now, this does mean that we will have multiple crews working at one time, and that will mean there's more coordination that needs to happen to make sure crews are not overlapping in the same work area. and they will have to be working together to make sure that one crew does not get ahead of another one. You can see our milestones here with our notice to proceed, our site prep, our MSE wall, storm sewer, roadway and bike lanes, into our finishes, site restoration, and turnover. I look forward to answering your questions about this schedule in a minute.
And the last thing that we're going to discuss is the cost estimates. The 5 categories that our bid items fall into are earthwork, MSC walls, construction, road construction, and paving, storm drainage, and erosion control. Starting with the earthwork, that mainly consisted of lots of excavation, which determining the quantities for basically looked like all of our team members going through the bid document, using the scale that is just given to us there. Also with the utilization of Blue Beam was very helpful. And we decided that the topsoil stripping would also be included with the excavation number, as there was no separate bid item number for the topsoil stripping itself. Going to the MSC walls and road construction, there were many concrete items associated, and we understand that there must be a 10% waste to be included with the cost. So that is also included with our items. And storm drainage had mainly each unit values. So again, going through the contract documents and simply counting each quantity for each item and multiplying by however many there were. And erosion control consisted of silt fence, curtain, and inlet filters. The silt fence and inlet filters will be replaced throughout the project, so what we did was find the placement cost for just one round, and then we tripled that value as to account for that replacement. And the curtain, the silt curtain, that was throughout the project outside of the LOD, and that was also included per the RFP. And our demobilization and mobilization is 5% of our contract value. And then we personally decided that the contingency and indirect work will be 15% and 10% of the contract value, respectively. The fishing competition that is going to be held at the end of the year, we are also sponsoring, which is $10,000 also included in our estimate, with a total price bid of $7.7 million.
One thing that I would also like to add on to this is the way we translated our estimated quantities into production rates. We utilized the RS means that were provided to us, along with the addendums that were also provided. This assisted us in making sure that our estimated durations and costs for production values were accurate and clear.
Thank you for your time and attention. Our team will focus on clear communication, collaboration, as well as the delivery of a safe and sustainable infrastructure for this project. We are now open to any questions.
I'll kick us off. Thank you for your presentation. Love to hear it.
Thank you, sir.
I noticed that you put your stockpile plan, I believe it was at the southeast corner, the intersection of 143rd and aisle 126. Is that correct?
Yes, I
yes,
believe
sir.
so.
Right. So 2 questions related to that. I'll ask them separately. First off, do you feel that double handling all of the material is worth the added cost in how it allows you to construct your projects in a more certain manner?
So when we were thinking about this, we're looking at the general area. The whole point of this project is we don't like having heavy trucking in this area. So the idea is rather than having to shut down that road during potentially busy times, even when at the site visit that the contractor took in the past few days, just pulling into the driveway, backed up cars almost 10 in each direction. The idea is we can look at the traffic plans in our coordination with the local law enforcement and figure out the best time to have the trucks come on in. It also allows it that if we have a stockpile going, so if for some reason a delivery gets delayed, we have stockpile ready to go. It also makes it that we don't necessarily have to worry about potential issues with the trucks. We don't have to worry about going through and counting quantities. If a QA/QC issue occurs and we need to stop work for a little bit, we're also able to keep things being delivered without having trucks parked on the side of the road. It also allows us to set up multiple staging in the phasing from, as the schedule talked about. We go through and we start excavating. We're going to ship that off immediately. But when we start putting down common fill and rock fill in the MSE walls, we don't necessarily want to have multiple different material type trucks coming on the site because we're building a road, not an entire 30-lane highway, so having a place for them all to line up. As you can see, the purple arrows, we have multiple places where trucks can load and unload. This allows us to be able to handle those multiple material quantities being delivered at once to allow for the different phasing in the project.
Thank you. And I guess that ties into this, but what planning have you done to account for worker safety and public safety for your equipment that's going to be crossing IL-126 in order to get material from your stockpiles to the actual work?
Yeah, of course. So again, working with the Plainfield Police Department, if we're going to be on state roads, the Illinois State Police Department, working with them, seeing if we need to do any permits for temporary crossing. Also, for the safety, if we're going to have any of that crossing, we're going to talk about in the toolbox talk. Site safety orientation, we'll have something about crossing the road. We're looking at not a huge machine going across, so it's not going to be any more than a road crossing the simple crossroads out there. We expect it to be limited impact to the local community. In terms of safety, we're going to make sure everyone has the proper PPE on. We're going to make sure that we have well notice for the local community. As we said, we'll have a website, emails, signage. We're also going to have an MOT MPT plan that's going to be released. We'll make sure we have signage a decent amount out so vehicles know that there might be work up ahead, and we'll make sure we have the slow and the stop waivers and flaggers to make sure that we are prepared for any crossings. Additionally, being so close to the hospitals and having that contingency plan in place, if God forbid something were to happen, we are prepared to offer medical attention at a moment's notice.
And to further add to that, in terms of public safety, we especially pride ourselves on that. We have collaborated many times with local HOAs, local clubs, stuff like that, in order to get the word out and make sure that nobody in the area is uninformed. Because the last thing you want to deal with is people that are a bit confused or end up running into traffic. Because a lot of times worker safety is often determined by the near local citizens driving. And the last thing we definitely don't want to happen, and I've never had happen at this company, is any worker injuries.
Yeah, so as far as a schedule issue, if a subcontractor were to approach us, for example, for the sewer systems, if they were to approach us and say, hey, we're behind schedule, he'll talk about quality control, I'll talk about schedule. One thing that we would do is we would request permitting from the city to see if any overtime is possible. We understand the hours of this site are 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Just an easy solution is asking if we can extend that to 5 p.m. to the end of the workday. If they say no, which is totally within their rights and we fully understand, we would ask that they bring in another crew from the subcontractor, and we would also ask that they provide us with reasoning as to why they are not meeting the original production rates. And then we would go from there to see if a second crew is available. And we would have them start with the way the schedule is set up. We would have them start on a different section of the for example, with the sewer, a section farther forward, putting in either more manhole covers or manholes or more piping. Does that answer your question?
And also just to add on to that, as we mentioned, before we start construction, we are going to be meeting with all our subcontractors. We got the quotes. We made our selections. We'll reach out if awarded the bid, and we're going to go through and we're going to make a contract with provisions in there if a noncompliance happens. For example, we were recently doing a noise wall project, and the contractor was like, oh, the noise wall panels will get in. Trust us. We said, okay, if they're not, you have a contract, you know what happens. If it's a time delay, it's a cost delay for you. And as mentioned, we have scheduling provisions for that and the different selection of the being able to stockpile the materials. As I said, we can do a different phase. Overall, the coordination meetings should allow us to notice any potential issues far enough in advance where if it's like, hey, we're noticing that the common fill is going to be late. We're going to work ahead of schedule to try and prevent that, see if, since we work in the region, do we know any other potential suppliers we can work with and try to mitigate that risk. We also have that in our risk register for more details if you would like to look. But the idea is just having that open communication. If we see anything up, if the owner sees anything up, we want to address it as soon as possible so we have time to prepare and mitigate any risk it may have.
I have a question. You talked about some risks that might occur on the project. What do you guys think your biggest challenge would be on this project?
The biggest challenge that we noticed going through our risk register, we had a risk factor. We noticed that flooding and potential loss of material and time could be a significant risk. So the chance of it happening, we looked at the NOAA data, highly possible that we get heavy rain that will flood a majority of the site. So, and also, as mentioned, we have those 7 days already built in, but we want to make sure we have preparations. So if we see we have a major storm coming, we may look to purchase pumps that we may be able to put in the excavated area to try and mitigate the standing water. We're going to look and work with the local community and say, hey, is there going to be any flooded roads that are going to stop deliveries? That's why we have our meetings with them to say, if there are, we're going to figure out another route to go. So that's probably our biggest challenge, but again, we saw that in our risk register. We're going to work the best we can to mitigate any challenges that come from that. And as Greg said, we do have those days built in for the excavation, as that's going to be the biggest risk for flooding, as we're building a giant hole in the ground with no sewers in yet. So we're trying to prepare that early.
And to further add on the weather, we do understand that not only is it rain concerns, but it's also general winter time concerns. We know how Illinois' weather can be. We've seen the amount of ice pile up on the Chicago waterfront, and we know that the rest of Illinois is not exempt from that. In terms of that, we have multiple regional offices in the Chicagoland area. So in terms of that, if our workers can't go on site because we prioritize worker safety, first of all, we just mainly have them building stuff that, can be constructed inside. They can work on the epoxy or some of the concrete that can be easily delivered through truck beds. Anything that can mitigate any of the general delays that are seen with like any sort of rain, flooding, or snow, which is definitely the #1 thing with this area since it's right next to the DuPage River. That is something, and also lake effect snow from Lake Michigan. That is definitely something that we've always highly taken into consideration and really done our research and trying to mitigate any sort of potential delays.
And then one last final thing to add on to what Evan said about mostly flooding. That is another reason why the replacement of the silt fence and curtain, that is why that is in the contract bid. And I believe that having those tripled prices for multiple replacements will help account for any flooding that we will be facing. Yes, that's correct.
So, do you feel like you've sufficiently mitigated your risk if you have to carry that high contingency?
So we feel that we have, to the best of our ability, mitigated all the risks that we can predict. However, it's a crazy world out there. We have no clue what could happen. We've had experiences where we're working, and even though we did geotechnical borings, we find out, the design specs, we need to go a little deeper, and we find an entire underground cave or something like that. We can't prepare for that. We have the contingency at 15%, which could be seen as a little high, but it helps protect us, because if we hit a major road bump that no reasonable party would have been able to predict, even with our wonderful risk matrix, and we go out of business, we can't finish the job. The owner, you don't get your project either way. So we're having that a little bit higher just because it protects us, it protects you. As I said, we did the best we can. We're going to have our coordination meetings to make sure we can mitigate as much as possible, but we wanted to have that in there just as a general protection for everyone, because we don't want to see this project not completed for something that we could have been prepared for.
Yes, and to further add to that, in terms of that, I remember a saying going that any gripes you have with working with a professional in terms of pay and all that is nothing compared to the expensive cost of working with someone that isn't professional at all. In terms of that, we really take that into account, because like being insured for stuff like that is definitely important, because not only is it delaying us, but it's delaying the people of delaying the people of Plainfield, the Chicago metro area, the state of Illinois. We take a lot of pride in delivering to the community, and in terms of that, it definitely helps to be prepared for almost anything than to be unprepared, because that could lead to months in delay. I do remember a story one time of there was an accident that nobody could have predicted. Drunk driver goes all the way off the road, runs straight into our site facility. But thankfully, we were prepared. We had site crews on site. That was part of our contingency planning fund, which safely delivered them all the way down to a nearby hospital. So in that, we mitigated any sort of potential death, loss, injury, and we stayed on schedule thanks to rapid response, thanks to that same contingency planning.
Excavation. Definitely. That one, it's throughout the entire project. So just making sure that you got every single quantity. And then once we realized, oh, topsoil doesn't have an item, we need to include that with excavation. That's where it's most relevant. So just a lot of going back and forth with that, at least for me, if anyone else has anything to add.
Yes, so adding on to the excavation, we knew that the other bid items had like an exact amount. It was either stated somewhere in the drawings, or we were able to measure it in Bluebeam using the line tool. But for excavation, we had to, like, all of the shapes weren't exactly a geometrical figure, so we had to estimate the most there, and that was just it just came down to how closely we want to measure the polygons. And so that we had to figure out how specific do we want to get to the shape of the geometry in the CAD drawings.
I would also like to add that not only was estimating the excavation one of the most difficult, it was also extremely important, because excavation is on our critical path. If that quantity is not accurate, that will be pushing our entire project cycle back, which we definitely don't want. So a lot of time and care was taken into ensuring that those quantities were correct, because if that was wrong, then the dates I just gave won't be accurate, which none of us want. Yes, so I went through each activity, and I first scheduled it, finished start relationships as advised, and saw where we were at, and then I reasoned through through where we would be at in the project cycle. So for example, with excavation, when we're approximately halfway down the road, we can begin rock fill, because their duration is shorter. If we begin approximately 75% of the way through, excavation will finish, and we'll still have approximately 25% of that rock fill left, and so we can finish that by the time excavation's out. Rock fill is now coming in. So I did that for about every activity, just going through and seeing how that can move with that finished start, and then adding in a certain amount of lag, which is not always advised, but in this scenario, I believe that it was the best option, so that we could overlap activities but not have them running into each other.
And again, since we're having continued meetings with you, the owner, if we do realize that something might not work, or this isn't exactly what you're looking for, we can do an RFC, we can have a transmittal, and we can look at potentially changing that later on. But since, as Greg said, this is what we saw as the most efficient way to complete the project.
All right, thank you guys for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.